Hey, welcome to Hustle and Grit. This is a new podcast that me and my brother Harris have started. Harris, can you tell us a little bit more? What is this about?
So passing the buck. But welcome everyone. I think this is a podcast that me and Omar have been contemplating for some time, and what we wanted to kind of start a podcast off of was basically everything. Anything that kind of enlightens our mind and it's supposed to promote curiosity, thinking, and really understanding the environment and the world we're living in. Naturally, I think that both of us have a bit of a tendency towards business. Both of us are lawyers practicing in Ontario, so we do have an inclination towards that. But having said that, I think both of us exhibit a general curiosity in a lot of subjects, and we wanted to kind of bring that to the world.
just
And
just
this
to,
being,
just to
yeah.
jump in there, yeah, I think Harris put that very well. The podcast is not just about entrepreneurship, even though that's something that we've spent a large portion of our lives within. I think it's really about seeing how creativity and learning and education really connects every aspect of your life, and how it can really there's you can live a rich life through new experiences and learning and exploring things that you haven't previously explored.
Yeah, because I think that the misconception people have, and it's not unfounded. I think there has been a change in understanding what entrepreneurship is, but I feel like the core of entrepreneurship is living in society and being a productive member, and basically figuring out what the needs are of your community, and trying to fulfill those needs. And I think before, if you go back 100 years, your community was your neighborhood. And then because of the advent of the internet, the community has just grown. Now you have, I guess, startups like Uber and all these companies that are Tesla that are just across the world. So I think entrepreneurship is not about earning money. It has become to a lot of people, but I think at the core of it, it's still that fulfilling the needs of your community, and that's what you're kind of aiming for. And I think that's what, at least I see it. How do you see it?
I think that was very well put. I think it's also building community. I know. I think there's been a lot of advantages with the bigger companies being able to scale and be able to work at a grander scale. But one of the things that I think is sometimes lost when you have these large companies is you lose that sense of community. And I think that the future of entrepreneurship even is the companies that are able to get to that scale but retain that authentic sense of community at a very granular level as well.
I mean, I think the best businesses are the ones that build that trust, right? Branding is trust at scale. Before
Yeah.
you knew the guy who was selling you your hot dogs, right? I don't know why I'd say hot dogs, but you knew who owned the grocery store. You knew who owned like your bakery, whatever it is. So now it's more like you're looking at it from a multinational level. Now you have a sense of trust towards Nike. You have a trust towards all these other brands. And I think it fundamentally does come down to building that trust within your consumers. And then I guess consumers is a really awkward word. I don't like that word. But the people who are buying your stuff. You know what I found? Actually, this is like just totally random. I was when I was in law school, and Hurricane Sandy hit. And like I don't know how many people were just out of electricity. They would constantly be on TV saying we've got 100,000, 200,000 consumers without power. And I'm like, oh, that sounds so weird. It's not consumers without power, right? It's just people without power. I think some of the verbiage I feel a bit distant to, but that doesn't take away from the fact that entrepreneurship is required and it's what's needed to kind of fulfill the needs of society.
spoken like a capitalist.
Oh yeah.
But no, I agree, and I think also it goes beyond just the relationship between a company and the person that's buying their product or service. I think it also relates to how a company works with their employees or the staff that work at the company itself, because often there is this distance that's created, especially as a company grows, between the company itself and the people that are working for it, or the owners and the
Mm.
employees. And when you have a company that's really built on that foundation of community, then that distance is kind of reduced, and you have that family relationship there.
I mean, wouldn't you argue that every company starts off like that? And then as it gets bigger, there's that distance. How many big companies do you feel really have that sense of community?
I think some retain it. I think in different ways, in different strategies. I think one way that you can retain it is if you show that you care about your employees more than just kind of a component in a process, right? You consider them, you understand that they're people, they have needs, they have wants, and you invest in them, not in terms of just human capital. That word itself, human capital, is very, it's inhumane, I think, almost. A good example, I think I was speaking to one of my friends recently who was talking about how he felt he had a very distinct approach towards business from one of his business partners, and the idea was that how close they felt they needed to be with their employees, or how felt they needed to treat their employees to scale and become a big organization. And it brought to mind the distinction between Walmart and Costco, both very big companies. Walmart is a lot more sizable, but I think they both hold their own, right? But Walmart's relationship with their employees is very much, you're just someone that can come and go, and I will replace you at a moment's notice. Whereas Costco is known for being very for treating their employees extremely well, having really high retention, and having employees that really care about Costco. They'll know where the new deals are, what's coming in, and where the best place time to buy something, everything else. Whereas a Walmart employee just knows where each aisle is, right? They're not really invested in the brand and the identity or in their job more than just a paycheck.
Yeah, but do you think that Costco is any better in terms of the sweatshops and the products that they're selling?
Yeah, that's where the issue is. I guess it's not a completely ethical supply chain or business model, but that aspect of it, I felt they were doing good. But I guess they have room for improvement.
They have room for improvement. I mean, yeah, Costco sells some of the same stuff. I know this is a bit off topic, but I do feel like, okay, well, um, when I say community, I'm talking about a company that is, I guess, to a great degree, what you just said, where everybody's working together. But then that is also the front line of it, right? Costco knows that they would want perhaps more loyal. They have a more sophisticated customer base. I think majority of their sales is to businesses, and so they want the employees to be more committed to their work, which is why they'd pay them a little bit more. This is a cynic in me. Walmart, everything is disposable, and they know that their customers are only looking for the cheapest thing.
Yeah,
So
no, I that makes sense. It could be the intention could not be as good as I'm assuming it is. It could just be that, oh, there's a cost benefit in paying better, treating them better, higher retention, and
yeah,
it leads to more profitability. But that also, I think, leads to the fact that maybe building through an ethical standpoint or building through community has a cost benefit too. So maybe it's better to always have community. Maybe there is a benefit there that other companies should model their business model after too as well.
yeah. I think a lot of it though does revolve around the owner, or this co-founder or the founder, or whatever the founders of something. I feel like some founders are more geared towards building something, and others are geared towards making something. By making, I mean like it's more monetary. And if it's monetary, I think founders tend to, I mean, not tend to, they obviously always do prioritize profits over people. Whereas if you're kind of in something where you want to change something, then it's all about your people as well. So that's why, and this is a bit controversial, I don't buy into Elon Musk's like nonsense where he's trying to change the world. I feel like if you are trying to change the world, there's no means, like the means don't justify the ends. There's no, oh yeah, as long as I get the output, the input doesn't matter. So you would not be forcing your employees to be working under like this insane like heat traps or whatever in these tents and stuff, and they're like carried out in stretchers or forcing them to go back while like the country's in lockdown. I feel like if you were trying to make a change for humanity, the first thing you would care about is humanity. You wouldn't ignore that because you're trying to fix humanity. So it makes no sense whatsoever. Same thing with Amazon. Like if you've got like really poor working conditions in their warehouses, if you're trying to change humanity, you're not going to be basically ignoring humanity. But you know what? With Jeff Bezos, he never said he wanted to change humanity until like his recent thing where what was his like he's trying to get to the moon or something. He wants to go to the moon again and go to Mars or whatever. So he's already trying to. Is it Blue Moon? His
Yeah.
yeah. So his Blue
He's
Moon.
also more charismatic though than Elon
Who
Musk.
is?
Jeff Bezos.
Do you think so?
I think Elon Musk is he goes for the I'm weird, that's why I'm smart angle. Whereas Jeff Bezos is like he was a banker, he worked on Wall Street. He's refined, he's polished. So he has
He's
that.
more of a visionary.
Yeah.
I mean, a visionary, a graceful visionary in the public eye, as opposed to Musk, who's like, yeah, I guess so. But then Musk does always advertise, like his brand, I feel, is around, I'm going to bring humanity forward. Well, why are you messing up humanity to bring humanity forward? And the other thing is, which is what I really just love about some of the stuff he says, is like, hey, we're going to like, I guess, repurpose the land in Mars so that humans can live on it, terraform it or whatever. So my thinking was, why don't you just terraform like what we messed up on Earth first, and then we'll go to Mars? Because like, why are you trying to figure out something where you don't know what the conditions are? You send robots or little bots, RC cars driving around trying to take pictures and stuff, and like I'm not against it. It's good information, but if you're trying to solve something, why don't we solve something at home first? Why don't you terraform the garbage patch that's floating around the Pacific, and then we can figure out another planet?
But I think a lot of the stuff he says, even though he's not very well spoken, he does say things with intention, and I think a lot of times the things that he says, like I want to, I don't know, colonize Mars, or I don't know, send people on, I don't know, vacation to space. It's said with a purpose to create that buzz, create that mystery, and that excitement. When in reality, the goal is monetization, right? The goal is extracting minerals or whatever it is, finding the best way. And I think that is probably the end goal for whoever does succeed in that race. It's monetizing what is to be found on Mars, right? I'm sure there's stuff there.
No, it's rich resources. That's what it is. At the end of the day, it's like colonizing resources before anyone else can, right? And therefore, but you can't say, hey, listen, I want to go plunder Mars like we've plundered Earth, right? You got to say that it's for a noble cause, it's for a great reason, it's all of that stuff. And I'm not denying that there may be elements of it, but if your intention really is to make humanity better, which is what he keeps saying, that we need to move forward, then let's move forward by first bringing humanity to everybody on Earth, and then we can talk about bringing that humanity to the rest of the solar system.
Did you hear about his engineers who had no food and were fighting over, I think it was chicken nuggets and cigarettes?
No, I didn't know.
There was an article about how when he first started SpaceX, I think it was the U.S. Air Force did not approve of setting up in the States. So they went to, I forget where it was. It was an island. I'm not sure where. But it was a U.S. naval base was there too. But that naval base was independent, and they allowed him to go there. But supply runs were infrequent. So there'd be points in time where the engineers would have no food, or they'd be waiting on supply runs. So they were fighting over chicken nuggets and cigarettes. That was the whole article. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So I mean, you know what? Like, I do admire to some extent, like, in order to achieve a lot of things, you do need to sacrifice stuff. I do feel like a lot of people are too comfortable in their existence, right? And so there needs to be some strain, but then it's where it becomes unnecessary is where I'm like, you're kind of losing humanity, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So you know what? Now that we're pretty much like very in the topic in the middle of this, I wanted to talk about, and this is what you I guess brought up, was the 6 fundamentals every entrepreneur needs to succeed. This is as a caveat. This is not purely our own idea. This is more based off of a Harvard Business Review article from a very long time ago, 2013.
And I think also it's just a oversimplification to say there's 6 fundamentals or it's these. So we can go over these, and then I guess maybe we can throw in maybe what other things we think are good or important for starting a business
Yeah.
or general skills, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. So the first one is setting realistic expectations. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this nonsense at all.
I know. I think there's 2 types of expectations. I think you need to, which I struggle with this a lot too. Which you need to be able to dream, but you have to be it has to be a big dream, but also realistic in the sense that you see the path towards achieving that ginormous dream. But then your
Yeah.
short-term expectations, they can still be aggressive, but they still have to be realistic in that there has to be a path that you can see leading to that aggressive expectation,
Yeah.
right? So I could say I want to take over, I don't know, take on Walmart by next year, right?
Yeah.
And I have no realistic plan, nothing, no resources,
Yeah.
nothing to get there, right? So it means nothing.
Yeah, I think the setting the realistic expectations, the biggest thing is, I think there's universals or the macro, and successful entrepreneurs, the ones who are really visionaries and are greeted with that monetary success, can effectively, one of the many things that they can effectively do is connect the macro to the micro, or the universal to the particulars. Like, I feel like a lot of people would be like, you know what, it would be amazing if I could like have like a hoverboard and just sell it to everybody, and then everybody's just kind of going around and hovering and whatever, and then they wouldn't know how to apply it to their particular circumstance, right? So it's like having that vision and then knowing where you are and what the first step needs to be. I feel like a lot of people, I mean, even if you don't want to go into hoverboards, somebody wants to start like a Fortune 500 company. How many people do you know who are like, oh yes, and then I'll be in the office doing nothing except looking at graphs, and then they're like, oh well, since I can't do that, I guess we can't make the business, right?
Yeah, better get a job instead.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's better to like get down. Like, they don't want to get down and dirty. They don't want to do the messy work, and they're like, no, I want it to be at a point where I'm just creating or building or whatever, selling these things, because I am what's called an entrepreneur, and I'm not going to be doing a lot of the dirty stuff. And so I feel like it's understanding, okay, that's where you want to get to, but where are you right now, and what's the next step that is pragmatic and practical for you to take to get on to that stage, is what you should be thinking about if that's your goal.
Yeah, I think that's where people often get stuck. Also, some you have the personality types. Often with a lot of entrepreneurs, you give them an idea, or you give them, they're very imaginative, right? I think with both of us are like this, where you think of something, you have a concept, an idea, a business, and you start connecting dots. You're thinking, oh, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that, maybe I could do that. But if that's all you're doing, then it's pointless, right? If that's all you do. And this is something that I think struggled for a long time, where it's figuring out, okay, I keep on doing this, connecting this to maybe add that, explore that here. But what you're looking at is maybe you're looking at a 20-year timeline, and the closest you're getting is maybe the last 10 years or the last 15 years. You have to know what you're going to do next week, right? And what you're
Yeah.
going to do the week after, and the week after, and the week after, to get to that full timeline. There was a quote I read. I think it was one of the Google co-founders. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who said it, but it was. I think it was one of the Google co-founders. They said, our current objective is not to take over the world, right? So he's
Yeah.
suggesting that their long-term objective is taking over the world, but just not right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it was
I
a
mean, I
well
think
put.
Google has something completely different where they have a monopoly and they're trying their best to say they don't because they don't
Hmm.
want too many regulations on them. But that's a different story. Going back to what you just said, though, how do you ground yourself then when you're constantly imagining things?
How do you ground? Um, first thing, I think the first thing that helped is opportunities always keep coming. When you're thinking that way, you're thinking, okay, you found another idea, you found another opportunity, you found something else. You have to shut that off. I think one thing that I found that helped was explore it, so that my curiosity has kind of like I am able to explore that curiosity, how I would iron out, but just shut it off beyond a certain extent, right? Don't explore these new foreign or long term ideas too much, because they're outside of that current vision, right? And it's not to say that current vision isn't big. It's just you can't keep expanding it, right? Because then you're lost and you're confused and you're doing too many things. Um, so I think it's letting yourself be curious with limits.
With limits, but then how do you know, like, when you're drawing that limit? How wide is that road that you're walking on?
It's arbitrary. I think it's the time. I guess this is how I do it for myself. Arbitrary as in I'm just
Yeah.
saying what I've been trying with myself. It's the time wasted, I think. I think
Yeah.
it's important to do those exercises, because it helps you think and it helps you explore the logic of that situation or that circumstance and attach it to maybe you think of an idea within a specific industry, and you don't know the industry, but you know something else about a different industry that relates to that industry. So then you start connecting how that you would apply your knowledge to that particular idea, how you would monetize that idea, and how would you go down that path. It helps you with that exercise strengthen certain skills, learn about the logic of certain things, but it
Yeah.
becomes problematic when you're wasting a lot of time literally doing research and building a business plan, right? So I think it's more an exercise maybe of time of, okay, I can spend this 15, 20, whatever minutes exploring this, but then I need to stop and focus on what I need to be doing right now.
Yeah. No, I think uh, what grounds me, like what my kind of train of thought is, I obviously get lost in my imagination. And I'd be like, oh, then this and this and this and this and this and this, and oh my God, all that stuff would be nice. But then at one point you become overwhelmed because you're like, whoa, like there's a lot, right? And then I have to kind of take a step back and be like, all right, forget about all of that. What can I finish today? And then I kind of start doing that. But I need both. I need to get overwhelmed so I can keep pushing myself and keep running towards it. So it's a good source of motivation. It also provides some kind of direction. I'm not just doing busy work for that day. But then I also do need to come back down to earth and be like, all right, I need to complete these tasks today. And if I complete these tasks today, I'm good. Right. And from with that, I could just move to the next day and kind of do the same thing where you're just completing tasks and you keep going, because a lot of the stuff that, for example, that we're working on, I wish it was already done, right? But and you get impatient and you're running towards it
Yes.
and you're trying to figure things out, but then you're like, no, like, okay, I don't want to stress myself out too much, because you don't want to treat it as a sprint and then burn out like 3 days later. It is a marathon, so you have to be patient in that sense. But then, like, you just take, okay, these are the steps I need to do today, and you got to keep pushing at it. And it's like, if you understand where you want to be, and that's why it's also critical to have that imagination, because if you know where you want to be, then you know that you're looking at you need several different things to get to that point, right? And this is very vague, but an example would be if you want a Fortune 500 company. A Fortune 500 company, a successful one, does not just sell a product or service, right? There's a very good, effective like marketing department to it, sales team. There's all these things. There's accounting. There's processes. There's all this stuff that where there's a group of people. It's a team of people that are very coordinated in their efforts and running together very effectively. So in order to, for example, get to that level 20 years from now, God willing, right? You have to figure out it's not just one road. There's 5 roads, and you need to start setting the ball in motion in a few different areas so that you kind of get there and have all of them there. Because the last thing you want is you're only focusing on one area. You're only focusing on your product, your good and service. And then in 20 years, you realize, oh, man, this is not the only thing. I needed like all these other things that I didn't even think about, right? So that is what like keeps the imagination going, but then you need to boil it down and start figuring out, okay, step by step what you want to do. And in the beginning, the one thing I feel like that is the most annoying is like task switching. Like when you have to do one type of task, right? It could be like accounting, and then you have to move over to some operational issue, right? Like for me, that is extremely, extremely exhausting, where it's like it could be those tasks separately are very minor, but to switch your mind off because it's using certain things, certain tools for one task to move it to another one, it's extremely difficult. So that's why it becomes more critical, I feel like, at least in the earlier stages, when you don't have a lot of different people doing these things, or you're still heavily involved, even if you have a team with you, that you kind of figure out your days and say, okay, well, today I'm only going to do this task so that I have that flow. And if I have that flow, I'm more efficient. And then tomorrow I'm going to work on this department here of whatever business you may be in. So business, product, service, whatever it is, like the more variance in, I feel like the tasks that you're doing in a particular day, the more tired or burnt out you get. Do you feel the same way?
To be honest, I disagree. But there's a caveat though, because I used to do that a lot, where I would literally like do sprints where I wouldn't mind if I'm staying up late, or I wake up, I'm doing one task and I'm doing the same task all day until late at night, but I need to get it done, right? And that's my goal. I need to finish this right now, which is important for, I think, the bigger like tasks. Maybe that's what you're talking about, so maybe I don't disagree. But I think then it becomes problematic because now you create a negative relationship, especially when it's a stressful task. When you remember that task, you think, oh man, that was a stressful 12 hours, but I finally finished it. But now I have to go back and start doing it again, right? Or I have to go back and start doing. So that's where it created that tension. So I found what helped was if I'm working on several different things, I'm allocating specific deliverables for each of those things that are smaller and digestible daily for each of those things. So then I do this task A, task B, task C, but I know specifically what the deliverables for each task is. Yeah. And my mind isn't overwhelmed, right? Yeah. So I know that I have to switch to this, but I'll switch to it later today, right? Right now I'll focus on this, take a break, switch to that, focus on it, take a break, switch to something else. So I think it really...
What I kind of was getting at was more, let's say you're doing... accounting, and you're like going through your financial statements and you're going through your cash flow, you're making sure everything is like the numbers are right, and then you have to flip to an operational issue, right? And then you have to switch to like a marketing issue, and then you have to switch to like producing something. Those variances for me are very, very like big. So it's like going from an accounting mindset, looking at the numbers, looking at, okay, where is everything? It's very logical, it's very mathematical, to moving to a more like, let's say, a marketing side, which is more emotive, right? Those are using different parts of your brain. So for me, that becomes something that can be perplexing. Not perplexing, but it's like tiring. I think that though, like to what you said, where like, okay, well, if I have a huge accounting project, or piece of work that I need to complete, I definitely wouldn't want to, like, there'll be different areas of that accounting project that I need to complete. Within that, I can switch, but I would quantify all of that as to be several pieces of the same picture.
Okay, so, I guess, no, that makes sense. As in, you're saying how you would approach the task would be a little bit different, I guess.
it's more, I guess, departmental that like for me is the bigger thing. But I mean, to each their own. If it like if people thrive more in being able to switch tasks, that's fine. For me, it's not like the something that I can um, do consistently throughout the day. I could probably do 3 different task switches in a day, and then I'm kind of burnt out.
Yeah, no, I probably do one. I probably do two max, 2 to 3. But another related topic too. When you were saying, I thought of something when you were saying that when you're running a business, you have to focus on all these different areas of the business, and you have to make sure that they're being growing and are refined as the business grows, which is very important because when you get to a certain stage and you haven't focused on a certain area of your business, now you're kind of in you have a bigger problem that you have to fix.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the other end of that, I think, focusing on certain things too early can be a waste of time, right? And I find sometimes people start doing that where they're just starting a business and they're thinking of stuff that they should be thinking of in a few years. But
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
mindset is, no, this is how you start a business. This is what I read in that manual that I read or something. And they end up
But you
wasting
know,
time and money. And
I feel those issues that you're talking about where they're wasting things on the wrong time, at least kind of my insight with that is all those people who are wasting on the wrong time, they are delaying the decision of going to market always and testing out their ideas and feeling that rejection. So I feel like that's the one thing that they just overlook completely. And so they're like, "Oh no, before like I can do anything, I need this computer and I need this business card and I need this hat and I need this swag and I need all this other stuff. And without it, the company just can't function." But really, those decisions are like they're spending money. They're not, they're working on the bottom, not half, 90% of your income statement, which is all of the expenses. That top line, that one line, the revenue, the sales, is usually what they are pushing forward, because the revenue, the sales is what makes somebody the most vulnerable. It's what makes you have to go out and kind of get that stuff. So that's the one thing that it's like, okay, they don't focus in on that. They're like, all these other things I need to have before it's not possible to have a business without it.
reminded me of a quote by I don't know why I'm remembering these quotes today, but I don't normally. By Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn co-founder, he said that if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of your product, you launch too late. I think that's a very important quote, and I think it really
Yeah.
relates because often I always fall into this too. Is you attach your ego to a product, and you also
Yeah.
attach the fear of failure to the product, and the more you
Yeah.
do that, the more opportunity you have to like the more you're delaying it unnecessarily, and then you end up not getting that feedback and that constant iteration that you should be spending your time on when you're launching a business.
No, no, 100%. I think it's more like, and it's something that I had to get over in the beginning. It was not even just like launching a specific um, like program. It's about everything in life. Like you just need to take that first step. I don't like constantly being like, oh, I'm not ready for this, or I just need this one other thing and everything will be perfect. Or creating again that ideal scenario in your mind and then being unable to take that first step towards that scenario because you're not already in it, prevents like a lot of people from doing anything. And I think the first thing is to like kind of uneducate yourself from all of that. But man, we got like 6 points here, and we just stuck in the first one. The next one, okay.
I
Second
think we
point
probably
number
went
2.
through
Yeah,
have a clear value proposition.
yeah. Knowing which one, I don't know about that one either, man. I think that you should have some kind of direction in the beginning, but you should also be flexible, right? Like again, Jeff Bezos on it from Amazon was his saying is have your vision down, but be flexible in your execution. And I think that's what it is. Like your value proposition. I mean, did Uber start off trying to be like a cab company? I don't think so. I believe it was something else. And a lot of these companies, they pivot. They pivot from, hey, I wanted to look at this, and then, whoa, I see this other opportunity, and that's how you can monetize it. And so because there's a huge difference between theoretically trying to understand an industry and actually operating within that industry.
But I think also it's the difference also between what the consumer impression of your value proposition is, and
Yeah.
what the CEO or the person making the strategic decisions, how they understand their value proposition. Because sometimes there is a disconnect intentionally because the CEO has a longer term vision. For example, with Jeff Bezos starting off selling books, and then even there's early interviews with him where he's talking about how the goal is creating an online marketplace, right? But books was a good opportunity because the margins on the books led him to that opportunity. And so, from my understanding of that, was that he at least understood at that time that their value proposition was
Yeah.
that they're providing an online avenue, an online marketplace to buy books at affordable prices, right? So it's
Yeah.
online, affordable prices, shipped to your door without you leaving your house. Those three things.
I
Whereas to a
mean,
consumer,
yeah.
the book carries extra weight than it really does to that to the leader of that organization or to Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. I mean, the thing was, that's connecting the macro to the micro, right? He's got a universal perspective he's bringing down to the particulars. But the flexibility, though, is he never thought about starting AWS, and that's where he's making the most of his money, right?
Yeah.
Amazon Web Services, for those of you who don't know, is where majority of Amazon's profits are derived from. They're not necessarily from Amazon itself. He makes a decent killing through Amazon, the website, right, that marketplace. But then the flexibility, we had no intention of starting servers. And I think it was 2019 that they, I think prior to that, they were using, what was it, Oracle's entire like infrastructure. And 2019 was when they fully cut themselves off and all of their data centers were their own. So, and Oracle was just kind of sitting around, and they were kind of proud that Amazon wouldn't have survived without us, but now they don't need you anymore. And so I feel like it's both, right? You're kind of you have a vision, right? And then you have to bring it down to where you are, and then you also have to move to figuring out like if there's any opportunities that you see in the meantime, how can you take advantage of those? But then it also comes down to because I feel like we see opportunities all the time, and I just have to be like, all right, listen, there's like money everywhere. We just got to calm down. Got to look at this thing here, focus in on this, make this really well, and then take advantage of everything.
Yeah,
Everything
no, I
else.
agree. I think it's just it's being aware of your current circumstances, but then also constantly reassessing. So I guess that leads to your point too, where you're saying that it's not necessary to have a clear value proposition because it changes over time. So because your circumstances change over time too, so that relates to that. And even with your example of AWS, I don't even think Jeff Bezos thought of AWS. I think it was one of the guy that took over
He's
as CEO.
yeah currently
Yeah, so he's the one that thought of it. He gave him the position and then it became really profitable and it became the moneymaker.
yeah. So what's the next one? Next one, offer unique attributes.
I think that's important. What are your thoughts?
But what's really unique?
No, so not. I know. Actually, I guess not literally important. I mean, you have to know your differentiator, whether it's an actual differentiator, is different. Meaning that whether it's something that's protected or only true for your company, that's a separate question. But you have to know how you're positioning yourself in front of the customer and what is unique about that positioning compared to another group of people positioning another way, right? So I guess you have to know which group you fall into, right? So our example with our law firm, one of our positioning points is that we were and have been a digital law firm. And then we were city agnostic, right? We were across Ontario for a long time, since for many years now. Whereas for other law firms, they were very local, right? They were very much only working in their communities or in their particular city or area. So that was one of our unique attributes, but it's not unique in that there's other digital law firms now, right? Because of COVID, everybody started having to use Zoom, but we still position ourselves that way because that's what we've done and that's what makes us unique still. And that's a skill that we've refined more than other firms, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's useful.
I mean, just for Law Society, we're not making that claim. We feel like we may have position ourselves better. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There is
So-
no qualitative differentiation being made. That's the exact rule. No.
Yeah. So
Oh, man.
yeah, no. But then the thing is any unique attribute will always every competitive advantage. So when I hear unique attribute, I'm thinking more competitive advantage. So that competitive advantage will always dissolve over time. You will always have copycats popping up, and then they may innovate like better than you. And so I feel like this offer unique attributes is not something that is the fundamental. The fundamental is basically developing a innovative mindset where you're not looking at just what you're doing, but whichever area that you're kind of practicing in, you need to understand what actors are influencing your specific area and how to truly be innovative in a far-reaching manner. And so that, I think, will always keep you ahead of everything, because you know not only what is unique about you now, but you will always like have a game plan on how you're going to stay ahead of everything, right? And I feel like we did that with our law firm. Again, not a qualitative representation. However, is it qualitative or quantitative? Qualitative.
I
Yeah.
believe it was quantitative.
Okay, so it's not any qualitative or
Oh,
quantitative
actually, yeah, I don't
representation that
remember
we're making, right? But I feel like we came into the industry and we're like, okay, there's a few things that we would do differently that we did not see anybody else doing. And our roadmap was for the next 20 years. It was not for, hey, we just need to like do this differently. If we got a nicer logo, we got a nicer website, we got a nicer this, that'll change everything. It's more like, hey, we need these steps to like do this, and then with that step we do this, and with that step we do this. So the roadmap is kind of far-reaching to how it should be, or how we would like it to be. But I think that again, are we offering unique attributes? I don't know. It's more like we're trying to keep an innovative mindset, and we're seeing, okay, if there's all these problems coming, how can we change it? Did we know, for example, like 5 years ago, man, like how programs were created was much different from where it is now. But you have to adapt to it constantly and then pivot with everything, because you might have a 20-year game plan, but so does everybody else. There's a lot of visionaries out there, and people in different industries are going to influence your industry. So we may be in the legal industry, but the developments in technology and all these other places will affect our kind of 20-year plan.
And the law, changes in the law. I remember with California, they changed the law. There's a brief moment where there was the prospect of changes coming in the industry overall, where California allowed non-lawyers to invest in law firms. Then the Twitch co-founder started his digital law firm. Then he failed, shut that down, and then things went back to normal. So I think it's always keeping an open eye.
What do you mean they went back? Wait, hold on. I knew that they opened it up.
I sent you articles. Yeah. So he
No,
said,
but I knew they opened it
yeah.
up. But they didn't
so
go
he
back.
started. No, so they didn't change the law, but what happened was, I think he was one of the people that was likely, or his investors as well, were lobbying to have that law changed, and that was the only kind of real investment or company that came out of that law. And it was started. They spent a lot of money. They invested a lot of money into the company. Lasted, I think, maybe a year, max 2, and then they closed their doors and they moved on, because they realized it was an industry that, unlike others where an outsider could come in and completely shift the industry required someone that was internal to the industry to change it. And the management team at that company just didn't know how the legal industry worked, and they were just trying to play that typical tech role where your lawyer is just being plugged into that position without having a conscious awareness of what can be the repercussions of doing that kind of model, right? So they failed. But
I think it's very nuanced. The legal industry is extremely nuanced. Even the most simplistic areas of law is very nuanced. You can't just go in and be like, all right, give me your decision tree when you're trying to figure out this problem and that's it. Well, like that decision tree is like going to be insane. It's not something that like even now when I'm working with my team, a lot of the times it's like they may have seen several different scenarios, but then when a new scenario comes up, they're trying to apply the old answers to the new. And even though they've seen a lot, the new could just have one nuance that changes everything. That then you're like, no, you used to behave like this, but with this situation, you're behaving like this. And so it becomes like, it's interesting. It gets me thinking because I know that we're trying to do the same thing in a lot of ways. We're trying to quantify or logically map these decisions that we make, and it's not. It's pretty nuanced, and you require experience, and you require a lot of different scenarios to be able to go through something effectively.
and it's evolving too, right? They tell you that in law school all the time. There's no fixed set of laws. Remember, you probably heard it
Yeah,
many times. It's always evolving. Case law is always changing how
yeah,
decisions are made or how a certain aspect of the law is applied.
yeah. But I mean, that's kind of like you could say rulings, right? And then with those rulings, I'm talking about even just like the transactional side of it,
Yeah,
right?
so
If
even
you,
even
yeah,
transactional law is impacted. It might not be as big of an impact, but even transactional law is impacted by case law because you could have maybe a specific circumstance where a clause in a contract is interpreted a certain way, and now every time that specific circumstance comes about again, you have to consider
yeah,
that case law when advising the client on how to
yeah,
write or draft that contract, right? So
yeah.
I think it's always that's why people pay so much to lawyers because it's always understanding what is the new trends that are coming, the new changes that
Yeah.
are coming, and being able to defend yourselves from them.
And that's why I find like a lot of it's dangerous how a lot of people will go online and be like, "Oh, I've got a template agreement," right? Well, I mean, you don't know. You may say like, okay, you might go to a lawyer, and I'm not trying to advocate our firm or like our profession, right? But this is what I'm thinking, right? Like this is what people, even if you're listening to this and you're not legally inclined, this is what you should be thinking about. If you take a template and you look at an agreement and you're like, all right, well, the lawyer is going to make something like this, might as well, plug and play, right? Um, and you go to a lawyer and they do take that same template and give you something like that. Even though they're giving the same thing, there is a reason why they're giving it to you. There could have been a nuance, and often enough that happens that you need to tweak it. I mean, there's always a nuance that you need to tweak. And you'll be like, okay, you can't put both of these clauses in together. You can't put this clause in with this, or your situation is this. You need to think about that, whatever it is, right? And so it's really a robust agreement, which I find to be very attractive to read, right? Things that are well written, the agreement that's well structured, and even lawyers that are just well spoken and like they have experience. They've got experience. But my thing is that they're going to take in so many different scenarios when they're getting your contract drafted that it's not that easy to just get a template and be like, all right, well, this is fine. If for example, even something small like shareholders agreement, right, or an operation agreement, anything when businesses are starting, they're like, well, you know what, we're just starting, we don't have anything, right? You're not thinking of all the scenarios, and that's when I think it is like the most important too, because that's like your constitution. That's the constitution of your company, right? And like any country, if you have a crappy constitution, right, the law and order is completely out of whack, right? And you're not going to be as efficient, right? I feel like for example, the states being where they are today, a lot of it is law and order, right? Like just putting the right things in the right places so that everybody, all the actors, know what to expect. It's creating that order, that predictability. And I feel like all societies that have kind of done well have been able to effectively have a strong constitution. So now when you're looking at a shareholders agreement or an operational agreement. You should not be looking at it as like, hey, let me do like a template. This is a constitution. This is going to govern how other people coming into your business are going to behave. It's going to govern how you're going to behave towards your employees. It's going to govern a lot of different relationships, and those relationships will change as the business evolves, and that constitution needs to have that. Not to say that there's not going to be amendments. In fact, if it's a good constitution, you are wanting amendments because you don't want to overdraft as well. So it's like figuring out where that kind of fine balance lies. You can't get that off of a template.
Yeah, I think that was very well put. I think also it relates to the analogy that you brought about it being the constitution of a country. I think what goes hand in hand with that is you have the constitution and you have your statutory laws, but then you also have frameworks for enforcement of the laws.
Yeah.
And that's always considered when when a law is drafted. Who will enforce this particular law? What
Yeah.
resources will be put into place to enforce that particular law? Because some laws are more important than others, and they warrant having a more intensive decision-making process to enforce them. Same thing with
Yeah.
the shareholders agreement. Some disagreements aren't as big as other disagreements, right? So you have to quantify and qualify what is important and at what level. And then at times people think, well, I have this on paper. I'm going to be my co-founder or my shareholder or my fellow shareholders will follow these rules and everything will be great. But if they don't, then I'll just sue them and everything is back to normal. When in reality, in the
Yeah.
real world, it's not that simple. Sometimes
Yeah.
you can't really sue them, or maybe you don't have maybe it's not worth the cost, or there's so many things at play, right?
I
So
mean,
it's important to,
they need to, like, people need to think that, like, okay, if you have a business that you're kind of aiming for, this like amazing idea, right? Do you want to now put that on the back burner as you try to get vengeance, right? Like, do you want to spend that time on the revenge, or do you want to have something that, okay, if things go wrong, which they will go wrong, right? You're able to cut off the tumor and then keep going to like what you want to do. And I feel like an effective contract, and I feel like in general, good lawyers, right? Especially when you're looking at more corporate law, they keep you out of court, right? Because you want, like, even if you're having a dispute, it's better to settle it out of court and have more of that decision, that conclusion in your hand than putting it up to a judge. And I know a lot of people feel like, oh my God, the judge is going to have all these metrics. Judges are people. They're going to make human decisions, right? And not to like cast doubt on how professional they are, but like their mood can affect how they're viewing your particular scenario, and it's perfectly fine because they're human, and that's what it is. It's a human problem that you're having to begin with, the dispute that you have with somebody else, and there's another human who's trying to fix that. So for me, it's like good lawyers should keep you out. They should keep you level-headed and be like, all right, this is what you have on the line here. This is how much you can afford to lose. This is when you really should be going to court. Like, there are some times where you really should be going to court. But at other points, like, it's just keeping everybody out and making sure that your vision has the highest chance of success that it possibly can.
that makes sense. I think that's very well put. I think another good analogy is software development, something that I learned recently too, how when developers are making software, they have to think through every single circumstance that can occur, like any input that's going into that computer, any click, anything that's typed. And sometimes you'll notice when you're working on your computer and something just freezes and it keeps on loading, it's because the computer did not have, or that software did not have that particular logic in that circumstance. So it keeps on trying again and again and again and again. Same thing happens with a good shareholders agreement. You have to think through every circumstance, including the worst case scenario. So what is the worst that could happen? Maybe you have to dissolve. Maybe you have to split the company. Maybe one co-founder has to go their own way. All of these things could happen. But how do you deal with the assets? How do you separate? And how do you move on? Right? Or maybe there's circumstances where you have a big problem, but maybe there's tools available to solve that problem without separating and continuing on in your journey together. Speaking of, we went on a completely side tangent. I think we should get back to our list. What's next on the list?
Find your niche in a sizable market.
Okay, find your niche. What do you think?
Uh, I mean, really, like it really depends. I don't know, man. I'm like, because you know what? As soon as the sizable market came in, I'm thinking, all right, well, um, and I think I should have thought of this earlier. We started this conversation because whenever I think about entrepreneurship, I'm thinking about like, oh man, you got to build something that's like really big and it's like traverses the world and like you like are taking over like so many markets and stuff like that. But like entrepreneurs are guys who start restaurants too. You could open up a pizza shop at the end of the street and it's perfectly fine. It's just you could have all those other qualities where you're innovative, you're doing all these things, and have a pizza shop. But like the sizable market, I guess, sizable is subjective, right? If there's no pizza shops around for miles and miles, that's an awesome market. If there's like three in between your house and that pizza shop, you're not like it's unless you have something really just compelling. Even then, a lot of people are just gonna opt out. The market's just not there, depending on the density again. So there's a lot of variables. But I feel like, I guess, the best way to answer that is every business has a different viable threshold in order to start that business. And so that's sizable. I would redefine that in find your niche in a sustainable market, not a sizable. Somewhere, something that can sustain your market. So if you start an app where you're making 10 cents and there's only like 100 people, it could be 1,000 people willing to use that app every single month, you're still making $100. But if you got like 1,000 people on a service that you're offering and you're making $100 on every month, that's now becomes more on the sustainable side. So I would say find your niche in a sustainable market. You need to look at like sizes vary, right? But you need to look at your inputs and your outputs and figure out whether this is doable.
Yeah, I feel like the word niche is just thrown around too much, like a buzzword. Um,
Yeah.
I think a better way to put it is find a market opportunity, right? So that could be a market that is huge and the product you're about to sell is no different from anyone else's, but there's not enough people servicing that market, so there's an opportunity, right? So it's not necessarily a
Yeah.
niche, it's just there's a market opportunity. That means that there is, and that involves so many different things. What is the cost of starting that business? What is the cost of running that business? And do you have the skills necessary to run that business? So if all of those things come together and there's a market opportunity, meaning, like you said, there's enough there's enough demand in that market that is willing to pay enough for you to be able to run that business and grow that business, then that is a good place to start. Whether it's a niche, that's great. If you're able to get a niche and differentiate yourselves and defend that differentiation, good for you. But you don't need a niche. You just need an opportunity.
Yeah. I think the niche, what people are trying to get at, I feel, is not being the jack of all trades. So when you're opening up the pizza shop, you're not also like deciding to sell tacos and burgers and all of that. So the niche is the pizza shop.
Yeah.
Um, so it's more like not, but then I do feel like, yeah, people kind of misinterpret that to being um, like the niche has to be so unique that I'm selling diamond shaped pizzas. So again, there's
Yeah.
that balancing effort that you have to have. But yeah, I guess it's understanding what you're giving and having a sustainable market to have that good or service be like sold and for you to generate a profit for income or an earning, whatever that target may be.
That's why I
But
think
what's
a lot of millennials, especially the
yeah
younger entrepreneurs, their mindset is that if I'm starting a business, it has to be something that's a little bit like extremely unique and it has to be like this incredibly different
yeah
idea.
yeah
And that's the only way I do it because then I'm guaranteed success. And then I just have to make the idea and then I'm successful. But really, it's understanding that it's about finding a market that has an opportunity and executing on
yeah.
it.
I feel like a lot of people are like, oh my God, I got this ingenious idea.
Yeah.
Right. And then like they'll start running on it. And then a week later, they'll find somebody else who had the same idea. And they're like, oh man, nah, somebody else already did it.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another side. Yeah. Like, oh, now it's, oh, they already did it. They failed. Or maybe they did well. Okay, now it's done.
Yeah.
Two sides. And then you have the randomest ideas making so much money. What was that thing we were talking about the other day? The burrito blanket. Some guy made, I think, like $10 million off burrito blankets. So it's like the weirdest things. It's just he identified an opportunity, started doing drop shipping, and then he's able to make a good amount of money from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the last one, and then we can. Oh, wait, we got two more. So let's do these two, and then we will come and conclude this podcast. Okay, so design a sound business model. I don't know about creating models from the beginning, but you need to have some kind of loose structure. I feel like in the beginning, the most important part is developing whatever it is that you're going to be selling into the market and having an effective sales strategy. That's it. You don't even need marketing right away. You just need sales. Because marketing is more top of the funnel, sales is more bottom. So you need to get that out to see if you got any feedback. And then building off of that. But it's not like, oh my God, I need an accounting department and I need like marketing and a sales and I need like forecasting and all this other stuff and technology, and you're opening up that pizza shop down the street. Like, you don't overbuild.
Yeah, even and with that example too, nowadays everything's closed also, but you have cloud kitchens. So even the infrastructure need is gone, right? The retail outlet need is gone because everything is delivery. So you're literally people working out of their kitchen, making their pizza or whatever it is, and starting their business. And I think there's going to be a lot of new successful restaurants that will come out of that, because that's a cheap business model to innovate in that space. That's pushing out a lot of poor quality stuff, but also some really high quality stuff as well, right? So you have to be conscious of that.
Yeah. And then, okay, so last one, pull in customers cost effectively.
Don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. I guess that's the one I agree on. Like, why would I want to pay more for customers?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got no problem with that one.
Not much to say there. I think, I guess no. There's some of the old school. Also, I think this is where the ego, I guess, needs to be checked sometimes, right? Because when you're starting a business, it's like, oh, I need to make an ad that I need to be on a billboard, right? That's what people traditionally thought. Maybe some people still think, and so I need to make enough money to get on that billboard, because then whenever anyone's passing by, they're gonna be like, oh, that's so and so's business on that billboard. When really, no, you just need 10 cents per ad on Facebook, right? Or whatever your particular market is, right? So it's what's effective, not what's more visible to everybody when it's not as effective.
Yeah, no, I agree. That kind of wraps up our first podcast. Not only the article, but the podcast. And I think, it was good. I think hopefully our audience got something good to take away from all of this. This is going to be the first of many podcasts. Keep your hustle and grit on.
Sounds
any words?
Good.
Any last words?
That's all. I need to get used to looking at the camera. I keep looking the other way, but keep hustling.
It's a good time to remember now that we're ending the podcast.
At the very end. But keep hustling and keep your grit on, or whatever. We need to come up with a catchphrase. We'll do that next time.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us.
All right, man. Take care, guys.